All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Week 4 online lecture for your College Success Skills class. I hope that you are enjoying this class, that it's not too difficult or too stressful for you. I understand that there have been some difficulties in identifying different pieces of information for this class, and I want to apologize for that. That's largely my fault, and so we'll address some of those today. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to email me or ask the question during our Monday class. That's really one of the reasons we actually have a face-to-face classes, so you can ask those questions. So today we're going to be talking about cognition, and cognition is a big word, but believe me, it's really not that hard to understand. It's something that you'll want to understand in order to be a successful college student, and really that you'll want to understand in order to be a successful member of our society. Cognition is a process you've been undergoing your entire life, whether you've known it or not, and it's something you'll continue to do for the rest of your life, whether you like it or not. So our goal today is to define cognition and hopefully make the best of the process, no matter how uncomfortable or unnatural it may seem for some of us. So that we can learn most effectively and become really smart, cool people when we graduate college. So this very brief lecture will introduce the ideas of cognition, really what it means. We'll talk a little bit about some tips and tricks to improve learning, okay? And we'll go over some information you'll need to know for next time. We will have talked, I'm recording this before your Monday class, but on Monday we will have talked already about a pretty intensive couple of weeks that we're going to have during our face-to-face Monday classes in the library. So it's really important to be prepared for that, because there will be a lot of learning that will happen. There will be some group work involved, and it's required, so you need to go. The first thing I want to do today, though, is to talk a little bit about note-taking and to reflect on what you will have already learned from your Monday class. Hopefully you all attended. I think that that's probably one of my favorite subjects to talk about, because it's the thing that people always say they're going to start doing and never actually do. It's also one of the easiest to implement college success strategies we're going to talk about in this class. The reason that taking notes effectively, whether you use the Cornell note-taking methodology or your own freehand style, the reason that's so important is because it actually helps you remember information and puts less strain on the front part of your brain. Now, we'll be talking about cognition today, and cognition is a neuroscience. Okay, that means it's a science of the brain. So knowing what part of your brain is working when is an important part of what we'll be talking about. Our online lecture in a couple of weeks is on rote memorization, and then a following on critical thinking. During those two lectures, we will be talking in length about the different areas of cognition, and specifically the different areas of the brain that focus on those different sections. So note-taking focuses your brain on memorization, but it also frees your ability to move back and forth from different sections of your brain, from memorization to critical thinking and deep analysis. Teachers want you to be analyzing information that they share with you. They don't want you to just, hopefully, they don't want you to just drink it in and accept it as universal fact and apply it to every aspect of your life. The reality is, what you're learning in your classes is just researched information that is generally accepted, but not necessarily always true. So taking notes helps you keep a record of what's said in class, and if it's something that sparks an interest, you can do research on it later on. Please consider implementing the Cornell notes-taking methodology, at least some kind of note-taking methodology if you're not using it now. It will improve your grades in certain classes, and it will improve your ability to take in information and engage with the instructor who's teaching the class. The second thing I want to talk about today is to go back to my apology on what's going on in the class. I'm new to Moodle 2, just like all of you are probably new to Moodle 2. I've used Moodle 1 before, but it's very different from the teacher's side. And I'm having difficulty with the gradebook. It's actually a little bit of an annoyance for me right now, because I can't upload forums as graded assignments. It won't just count the fact that you've done a forum as an assignment. So I'm having to go in and add everyone's grade individually, and that's taking a little bit of time, and I won't release anyone's grade until they're all done. Those of you who are athletes or part of the TRIO program or really just looking for an information on your grade, all you have to do is send me an email or have me sign a grade release form, and I will definitely give that information to you. But here's the bottom line. If you did a discussion board post so far, you've gotten full points. If you haven't done a discussion board post, you have not received any points for that discussion board. So if you've missed one, you've either missed the first. If you missed the first discussion board, you missed 50 points. If you missed the second discussion board, you missed 75 points. And if you missed the third discussion board, you also missed 75 points. That means that if you've missed all three and you've no intent to turn those in, you will receive no higher than an A if you turn everything else in on time and get 100% on everything for the rest of the quarter. The habits that you're in now in this college success class that is very easy, frankly, and something that's simply there for you to learn and grow as a college student, the habits you start getting into now are going to carry through the rest of your college career. So please don't take this class for granted, even if it seems like it's something you've already learned before or it's something that's completely obvious to you. If you're not implementing what we're talking about, then you're paying for a class and you're sitting through a class, and you're torturing yourself through a class for no reason. This should be a fun, exciting experience for you where you're gaining some skills. So if you're worried about your grade, contact me via email is always best, and I will respond to you quickly and I will give you the information you need. I will have gradebook up. My goal is by the end of the week, but it could be into next week. If you're really, really stressed about it, again, just send me an email and I'm happy to give you your grade. All right, so let's move in to cognition. So as I told, I don't know if I've told you this yet or not, but I really, really love using cartoons as a way to identify points. And I think that this cartoon does a really good job of talking about cognition from sort of a humorous perspective. So what it says is it's two lab mice and what appears to be a scientific guy or a guy with glasses peeking over a box. And one of the mice has a switch and he's saying to his friend, it's a rather interesting phenomenon. Every time I press this lever, the postgraduate student breathes a sigh of relief. The reason that's funny is because the postgraduate student believes that they're the person who is training these mice through rote memorization or cognitive ability to remember information, but not necessarily to critically think about it. And the mice are critically thinking about it, and they're saying, well, I mean, obviously I can flip a switch, and I can remember to flip a switch, but I can also analyze the environment in which it's appropriate to flip this switch. Not to compare you to lab mice, but it's, I think, an interesting way of pointing out that memorization and critical thinking, which we will define over time, are aspects of your college career that you'll sometimes be shorted in. And they are both effective ways to learn information, and they're both necessary ways to learn information and become experts in your area. So cognition itself is defined as the act or process of knowing. Okay, so cognition includes every mental process that may be described as an experience of knowing, including perceiving, recognizing, conceiving, and reasoning, as distinguished from experience of feeling or willing. So that's a lot of words, and I think this sums it up. Quite simply, cognition refers to thinking. Cognition is the process that your brain goes through when it's presented with information it may or may not be familiar with. It's everything that is not emotional. So cognition is a very scientific reality for college students, and it's not the whole picture of what your brain goes through when you're presented with information in a class, but it does help us understand where the content that's going to be on your exams or going to be in your final paper and projects comes from. It comes from your ability to read, listen to, write about information, and construct ideas, thoughts, and actions associated from that information. In college, the goal is to increase your cognitive abilities, which just means get smarter. This says ASA, it should say AKA, so I'll fix that before I post it online. Memorization of facts. So cognition has two primary functions, as I had briefly mentioned, and those are associated with the different parts of your brain that work when it's thinking. The front lobe of your brain is a memory lobe, is a critical thinking lobe. And the critical thinking lobe of your brain requires a lot of energy to use. The base of your spine is the oldest part of your brain. It's the part of your brain that started developing first in the womb. And that is associated with memory. So your first experiences of learning, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, was associated with remembering things. And that comes from three different areas. We've talked about two of them in great detail. The first area is called impression. Impression is when you are stricken by something, or you are excited by something, or something sparks an emotional reaction in you that causes you to remember that thing. So if you're a little bit older like I am, and you were in driver's ed in the 80s or 90s like I was, and you took a driver's ed class, you might have seen a little movie called Red Asphalt. And Red Asphalt is a movie they don't show anymore, but it's essentially a driver's instructional video that's focused on shock value. It's very gory, it's very scary, it's supposed to bring about fear in new drivers so that they'll drive more safely when they get on the road. That video is an impression-based video. It definitely has some other informative information, and it might help you critically think about different things, but in the end, the whole message of the video is so outlandish and in your face that it's meant to create an impression upon you so that you learn from that impression. So that's impression. Repetition is when you repeat something over and over and over again, it becomes your habit. That was the trick I kept trying to drill into you when it came to using your calendar. Using your calendar is not going to be effective if you do it once and then put it in your backpack and never see it again. You have to do it multiple times for multiple weeks in a row, and over time it will just become a natural habit for you to pick it up when you've got something to write in it, and to pick it up at night before you go to bed so you can see what's going on the next day. Repetition is a very valuable tool in memory. And it's also one of the most commonly used tool in college cramming. So if you've ever been in a situation, or if you ever expect to be in a situation, which I hope you don't, where you don't really focus on studying for a large test or a large quiz or something very important in your grade until right before that particular quiz or exam, and you cram all the information into your brain that you can. A lot of that will be done through repetition. You'll read, say, a flashcard, and then you'll read it again and again and again and again, and hope that that will imprint on you and that you'll be able to remember it later on. Repetition is most effective when it's used over time, not in short periods of time. So it's sort of like if you're a runner. Repetition is not sprinting. Repetition is long distance. Impression is sprinting, and you can't always affect the impressions that are given to you because they're typically influenced by an external force. Repetition is something you can influence, and you can pace yourself over time. When we talked about note-taking, or when we will talk about note-taking, one of the things that we'll be talking about is how important it is to review your notes and to take your notes in a specific way and then refer to them in a specific way over time, again and again and again. That will help you over the course of a quarter take in information much more deeply and compare it to information you've learned since first taking the notes over time. Reinforcement is a form of memorization cognition where you give yourself a reward for doing good work or you punish yourself for bad work. Remember, it's positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. And this was Pavlov's dog. Okay, positive reinforcement: when he rang the bell, he gave the dog food and the dog started to salivate. Positive reinforcement of a specific stimuli or external situation creates an inherent reaction that is memorized. So if you create a scenario where you work really hard in a class for a specific goal, and the stimuli is that particular goal, and the reaction is you get a good grade, then over time you will be able to reward yourself more and more and feel inherently a benefit of working hard, and it will make that hard work less difficult on you emotionally. Cognition is not just about memorization, though. It's also about critical thought. And critical thought is, I messed this up earlier in the lecture, but it's the frontal part of your brain. It's the newer part of your brain, the part of your brain that continues to grow to this day. And this part of your brain is the piece that tends to be less wrinkly. Okay, a wrinkle, you may have probably heard this, is a piece of knowledge. And a wrinkle is actually just a series of connections from different nodes in your brain. And these nodes are actually where memories are stored. And so when they're fired off with electrons that are shot off by stimuli that you see, feel, touch, or hear, or smell or taste, they identify memories that are wrinkles. And that's something that you've learned. Okay? Critical thought is when you use these existing wrinkles that are already in the older part of your brain, the memorized part of your brain, the part of your brain that's touched first by stimuli, and you bring forth new information, and you compare and you contrast and you analyze and you construct new knowledge every time you get something new added to your repertoire. The old adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, is actually very much untrue. That is an emotional response that people have to taking in new information because they don't like when it conflicts with their experiences. But in college, our goal is to help you identify that your experiences are valuable, but they're not universal. And when you go out into the workforce or to a university or to wherever you're going to go, you have to understand that what you've already learned will be challenged. And you need to be able to flex yourself from your memory, the memory portion of your brain, to the critical thinking part of your brain, and take in information and construct new knowledge for the rest of your life. So that is critical thought. And that is also interpretation and opinion development. So I think the politics in the United States are a really poor example of how opinions can and should be developed. Because opinions are developed primarily in the United States politically based off of a party's representation. And it is a very bipartisan system. So if you don't identify in one of those two parties, even if you do, you might feel a little bit excluded from the overarching political system because your opinions differ. But the goal of our political system was originally to create an environment in which people could construct their own knowledge and their own ideas and their own opinions and compete with one another democratically. And the more popular ideas will become those that are maybe written into law or are brought into social programs and social structures. So you can see how important critical thought is and the ability to flex beyond your ego because it can impact everything, including our very economy to this day. So cognition is learning, and in order to be an effective person who learns, or learner, you have to know some basic tips, and we're basically going over them this entire quarter. So there are no tips that are universal, and I hope that I've been able to communicate that to you when we've talked about all of these different ideas and these different tools. There may be a situation where none of these tools work for you, but you're never going to know that if you don't give them a try. The best way to do this is to think about your learning styles really deeply, and think about your personal experiences and the preferences that you have really deeply. And then find tips and tools that seem to fit with those things and try them out for a couple of weeks. And if they don't work, maybe you try them in a different context or use a different tool. There are so many tips and tricks out there. To start this, I Googled college success tips, and it was millions of Google responses. I picked out the ones that I felt were the most realistic, but you can go in there and pick out some really interesting, really creative ideas. So I'm not going to click on these because there's a piece of information here that I should share with you. By saying that no tips are universal, I want to make sure that I'm not emphasizing any tips that might be construed as me telling you that they will work for you. I want you to go in here and identify the tips that will work for you on your own. These are good tips, but again, I just go into Google and type in college success tips, and it's just going to be a wealth of information and a wealth of knowledge for you. I picked out two specifically. One is tips from a college faculty member from a university, and I thought that was a pretty cool perspective to have because, you know, I'm adjunct faculty. I work full-time at the college, but my perspective is really from a student services side of things because I work in a student affairs environment. So this is a full-time, tenure-track, doctoral level faculty member who wrote these tips, and they're very easy to understand and implement, and I think they're pretty cool and effective. The other down here is tips for learning online, and I found that to be particularly useful. Many of you have been telling me that this is an online class. I've been hearing that a lot. I should clarify this is not an online class. This is a hybrid class, and a hybrid class is a class of blended learning styles, meaning half the time you're in the class and half the time you're not in the class. So half of these tips might work for you, half might not, but there are situations where you'll probably be taking an online class and these will probably help you. So bottom line, your ability to improve your learning is your job. It's no one else's. My job is to give you the information available in research, show you techniques that are typically the most commonly effective for students, and send you off into the world and hope that you implement something will work for you. Figuring out what works and what doesn't takes time, energy, and effort, and boy, I can tell you, it took me a while to adjust to college, and it took me a while to understand that my brain was going through some changes when I was in college. It doesn't matter how old you are or what life stage you're at, you're going through some mental changes right now, being in college. And those changes will continue to take place until you graduate and then on until the rest of your life. So cognition is that process of your brain changing and flexing and becoming the muscle that it truly is. So I hope I didn't confuse you too much. That's a lot of theory, but we will be talking in about a month of how to implement some of these things. I know that's a long time off. Just keep this information in your notes, and we'll refer to it later again for sure. So next time we're meeting in the library, please go to the library. Don't go to Angst Hall. You will not find us there. If you do find someone there, it's not going to be me, and the bulk of the class will be in the library foyer or entryway. When you first walk into the foyer, there are two sets of double doors and an entryway that has a lot of IT stuff. That's where we're meeting. Please stay close to the wall and stay quiet. There are classrooms going on. There are classes going on in the classrooms next door. When I get there and I meet and I feel that we are close enough to time, I will take everyone into the main section of the library where Margaret Mills, the librarian, will take us to the room that we'll be learning about information literacy at Skagit Valley College. This is something we'll be doing for 2 class periods, so this coming Monday and then the Monday after that. In the meantime, our online learning will be associated with the cognition lecture that we just did. You need to bring a pen and a paper to the next 2 classes, please. That's something you should always bring to every class. And think about potential topics for your final paper. You will need to use some of those. I don't know if you'll need them on Monday, but you'll need to start using them for the discussion board next week. Please go into the discussion board and respond to the posts as soon as possible. I really want to see 100% participation this time. I also want to clarify that in the syllabus, I had said that you need to respond to one person's post every week. And I'm finding that's not happening because it's probably really difficult to do. So please respond to a total of 3 people's posts throughout the course of the quarter. Okay, that will affect your overall participation grade, and I'll remind you and remind you and remind you at our next couple of face-to-face meetings. The reason I want you to respond to posts, and I don't want you to do them all in one week, is because I want you to be understanding what your fellow students are going through. It's a reinforcement that your experience is not universal and that there's a wealth of diversity here in our class. And again, if you're uncomfortable with someone reading something that you're going to write, don't put it in your post. If you want me to know it, you can send me an email, but otherwise just put information you're okay with people knowing in your posts. All right, again, if you're interested in your grade, email me. In the meantime, I'm going to work on this grade book, and thanks for your patience. This is a really great class, and I'm really enjoying it. Hope you are too. Have a great week, everybody.